And we're back. I guess that's going to be the best we've got.
Being robbed of our privacy, we're being robbed of our freedom of speech. And in so many ways, the brutal application here of what is going on with these animals is indicative of where we're at as a people, because there's being no quarter shown, there's no reasonableness being applied in terms of the application of the law by the Minister of Agriculture. There's been 9 months where there's been no health issue with the birds on any front. They won't allow them to be tested. There's all kinds of exceptions in the legislation for research to be done or for a quarantine to be input to verify that they're actually healthy and to allow them to live, but yet they're not doing them. So there's a whip at the back of this issue that's driving this issue forward, and it's not logic, it's not reasonableness, it's not Canadian proportionality, it's another agenda. And this agenda is also what is driving the destruction of our nation. And this is why we need to talk about why the British people left the European Union, because they lost control of their money, their laws, and their borders. And we're actually fighting the same thing here in Canada. These ostriches are a metaphor for Canada. We need to stand with Katie and her mom and the people that own this farm against the tyranny, because it's the government can't explain it. And the very fact that they're building a 3 or 4 story quadrangle, a compound for a kill zone for these animals, not just a few 100 feet away, is they don't want anybody to see what's going to happen. And you know what? If these animals were sick and dying, they'd be showing us that they were sick and dying, not hiding and creating a kill zone so they can kind of skulk away. And so, the big conversation for us is this: the ostriches, sadly, in the Canadian context, may not be enough for people to actually rise up until they're killed. Right? Like that may be how this plays, and I don't wish that, and I pray that there's actually justice brought here or some kind of reasonableness. But if that does happen, we really have to be thinking about how this has happened and how all of our due process and law and the framework of reasonableness in our legal infrastructure has been missed.
Okay, so
Right.
I want to just touch on that for a little bit, because this seems to be like one of the biggest parts of this. There doesn't seem to be any justice in the justice system. It seems to me the last submission that the family got to make previous to this one, the CFIA got to put in 139 documents and the farm got to put in 0. Now, that concerns me because that doesn't seem anywhere near equitable or fair. So if our justice system is indeed not working equitably, and we have these world governmental bodies that are exercising influence over our country, what's the answer? I mean, we talked a little bit about constitutional conventions. What's the answer there? How do we restructure the country without tearing it all down to the ground? How do we do it?
Well, we have to recognize that the Canada that we've grown up in is not as beautiful and bright and shining as we thought that it was. We grew up essentially with an illusion. And when you actually go into the basement and you look at the foundation stones of this country at that governmental level, going right back into our constitutional history, you see a framework that has allowed an elite to rule this country. I think that it's an very interesting discussion for Canadians, because I think the British Crown actually desired to see the Canadian people free. That was the will and intention of Queen Victoria. She revoked Section 2 of the BNA Act, which ensured that when she died, Canada as a dominion would not pass to any other heir or successor that was her offspring, which basically stopped that transfer legally.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and it took a long time actually for the British government to actually implement the legislation to say that that the sovereignty of the British Crown over Canada had been severed, and therefore the Canadian people became sovereign. And we're able then to define what their framework of government was supposed to be, and that was to be defined provincially.
Okay.
And that was never picked up. It was appropriated by the federal infrastructure, and this is a very live conversation now in relation to Alberta independence, because we're talking about a more, let's say, a more contemporary approach to international law through self-determination, and that's a referendum. But the deeper argument, the stronger argument, actually, even in the event that the referendum does not go forward, is that that sovereignty was severed by the Westminster Act 1931, and it had to go somewhere. And it went to the Canadian people in each of their provinces. And what it needs to happen is it needs to be picked up and stewarded. And we have never done that. And I think this is the legal pathway that needs to happen. And when you ask me the question, how do we get free in this country? We lose the crown. We establish a constitutional republic. We ensure that we have courts that don't become activist courts, that can actually unravel the value framework that built this nation. And when I talk about that, I'm talking about supremacy of God and the rule of law. And it's not that we have to have a big conversation about faith or anything else, but that framework of God in our history was rooted the values of Judeo-Christian values into our nation. Love your neighbor as yourself, don't steal, don't do all the things that we're not supposed to do, because that is what builds strength and certainty of the economy as well, actually.
Sure.
And so to say that this is a Christian nation is not a bad thing to say when it's in that context. That's actually what has made us strong. And
All the religions are the same anyway. At the end of the day, I mean, they all preach the same kind of thing. They're the same ethics. They have different specifics, and unless your religion preaches some kind of violence or something, I would say it's not really. It shouldn't be a point of difference for us.
no, I'm just saying the one that developed this country was the Christian.
Christians, yeah, absolutely.
That's all I'm
Not to
saying.
the exclusion of anyone else.
That's
but
all
yeah.
I'm saying about
Okay,
it.
yeah.
No, historically,
Gotcha,
it,
yeah.
it was the one that is
Absolutely.
right. So that's the value framework, and our culture, values, and traditions are rooted in that, and that's how we move forward, because that is actually the framework of the nation that we love. That's what we're actually grieving.
Mhm.
That's being
Mhm.
severed out
Mhm.
because no one wants to talk about those deeper. Let's just call it the deeper spiritual values in this fight, because this is about light and darkness, and it's about good and evil.
Mhm.
So I'm not here to have a kind of a theological conversation. I'm here
Right.
just to say we have a framework that has built a nation for people that love this nation.
Mhm.
And restoring that value framework is a part of what allows us then to have conversations where we say no to things that don't align. Like, we need to have a conversation in this nation about the compatibility of our culture, values, and traditions with militant Islam.
Mhm.
They're not compatible.
Mhm.
And we need to be able to say no to that and not
Yeah.
just yes to everything.
Right.
Right. And so this is where we need to go. So when I say we need to lose the crown, we need to establish a constitutional republic, we need to ensure there's not activist courts that are interpreting legislation, and that we have a framework that is rooted in the supremacy of God and the rule of law. It allows us to say stuff. And that allows everyone to think whatever they want, whether they want to ring bells
Yeah.
or have no faith at all, right? That's the freedom of religion that actually is a Canadian value.
Okay, so I'd like to ask you just a concluding question here.
And I have a question after.
Okay, you go ahead, please.
So people are saying, like, they love what you're saying, they love what you're talking about, what you stand for, but what are you doing or can you do to help this situation?
Well, I'm having conversations like this and recognizing that we have a much bigger fight here than just the ostriches, because the ostriches are a symbol of actually us in this nation, because there is an agenda to remove us from influence, to remove us from ownership, to remove us from having a say so in terms of how this country works, because ultimately that's what post-nationalism is about. It's removing the concept of nationhood and moving us to governance that is controlled from somewhere else by someone else, not someone that we elect. And so what I'm doing personally is I'm building a federal party who has candidates across this country that is bringing this narrative to our electorate. I'm contending for a new Canada 2.0 from within Alberta, because Alberta is really the beachhead for freedom for this nation. It's the only place that has the wealth and resolve and probably grit and fight and faith to actually step out and say no to this tyranny. But we're going to actually have to draw a line somewhere and say, you know what, we're tapping out of Canada 1.0 because truth has been corrupted. We have no justice, and it's an anti-human death cult that ultimately just wants resources and slaves.
Yeah.
Right. That's
He's not
what's
mixing
going
any
on.
words, is he? Not
That's
mixing
what's
any
going
words.
on. Well, we you know what? I'm so sick of all the fluffy conversations where we have in this nation, and we're not actually seriously getting into the root issues.
Yeah.
And you know what? When Canadians hear the root issues being spoken, it resonates.
Mm-hmm.
And that is our problem. And that's, where is Viva Phrase online or these days asking, where is Poilievre here? Where is Poilievre?
Mm.
Well, let's start with where is Poilievre talking about the foreign interference that's actually compromising this nation, because he's actually not engaging the exposure of who the spies are of the 11 MPs in this government when he could. And there is legislation that gives him a full defense if he feels that it's in the national interest to find that information out and disclose it to Canadians. And anybody who's asking, I have a lot of Canadians that get quite huffy with me and say, well, oh, he can't do it because if he does, he'll go to prison for 6 years. Well, that's actually the threat that he faces. But there's actually Section 15 in the Foreign Interference and Protection of Information Act 1985 that gives him a full and complete defense to that accusation if he actually discloses the information. So why don't we know who the traitors are in this country that are actually undermining the nation?
Yeah.
And so the biggest threat that I think our country is, at least the Liberals are telling us they're trying to betray us, right? The biggest threat to our nation is the fact that the Conservatives are enabling what the Liberals are doing, and everyone thinks that the Conservatives are the ones that are going to save them.
Yeah.
And no one's having these deeper conversations. That's why we need to look at conversations like what President Trump has said to Canada in the general election. You guys, we're going to put tariffs on you for value issues. We are not okay with fentanyl production in Canada. We're not okay with human trafficking in Canada. And if you don't fix it, we're going to implement tariffs. And what did Mark Carney say? Elbows up. He said we're going to have retaliatory tariffs. And what was Pierre Poilievre's campaign platform? Retaliatory tariffs. So look at it when you actually analyze that. Well, but let me finish. This is a huge point. When you actually analyze that, what was he choosing? They weren't choosing to protect Canadians and their businesses or Canadians and their grocery bills. They were choosing to not engage and confront organized crime in this country.
Is it because it's a uniparty? Is it?
It's a uniparty. It's a uniparty, and we need to wake up, because this is actually coming down to a visceral fight between how do we want to live and what are we as a people.
Yeah.
And that's why this matters. That's
Yeah.
why this matters. And we've got to continue to have these conversations to not just get, it's way bigger than 400 animals.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
Way bigger than 400
Yeah,
animals.
it is. Yeah, it is.
You had another question.
Well,
Sorry about that, but I mean,
no.
we got to look
It-
deeper and see this.
there's
It's not
so-
economic. These are not
Yeah.
just economics. The economic realities are the symptom discussions. We need to be having the root discussions.
And yet the CFIA, if you ask them, really what one of their biggest motivations is, it's trading partner policy. They want to make sure that they're not messing with the trading partners. However, our biggest trading partner, which we do about 70% of our trade with, wants to take the birds, wants to do the research, will come up and test.
Sure.
So I don't really understand
Yeah,
that.
well, again, they're making the economic issue an arguable issue because they think it sounds palatable, because we want to have certainty and have credibility with our trading partners. But the greatest way to have certainty and credibility with our trading partners is to quarantine those birds, secure their food so that everyone's satisfied that the food is secure and not being contaminated, and then quarantine them off for 3 or 6 or 9 months. And see that there's no outbreak of
they
it,
have been
like they
quarantined for
have.
9 months, right?
So that is the confidence and certainty that our trading partners needs. Is it actually killing them that's going to do that? No, there's another agenda here that's driving the whip on this issue.
So why do they want to kill? Why is the CFIA bent on killing these ostriches?
Well, it's always follow the money. Who's going to benefit from those ostriches and their enzymes or antibodies being dead? Or
Competition.
or the intellectual property
Competition.
that they have not being able to be used to advance the protection of human health. The drug companies that don't want a nutraceutical solution, right? So, okay, I'm not saying that's them. I'm just saying that's where the
follow the
financial
money.
benefit
Yep.
is. And if we have a government that for whatever reason is being levered into that kind of an economic argument for other interests, or because it aligns with where they're comfortable to take their leadership from,
Or where their shareholders are?
or where their shareholders are, then you see why an irritating family farm in the Kootenays in BC suddenly becomes a threat to $1 billion industry.
Wow. So what do you think of this family? Standing up.
I
picking up
like
the
to
spear.
fight. I like to fight. And that's the fight that all Canadians have somewhere buried within them. And everyone's waking up, and we need to wake up and show up for this fight. You know, and there's maybe right now here 75, 100 people coming and going, maybe up to 200. There needs to be 4 or 5. There needs to be 2,000 here tomorrow morning, because the Supreme Court could rule on this tomorrow. And if they
Literally.
rule to remove the stay, there needs to be people here to witness what's going on, right? So there's a call out. This is actually a critical time, and showing up here matters. It makes a difference. It sends a message. I can guarantee you they're monitoring how many people are here.
Oh yeah,
They're monitoring who's here. And this can't just be that little typical picture that they like to paint about a small fringe minority. This needs to be everyday Canadians, because it's your lives that are being stolen.
Yeah.
And this is emblematic. This is a metaphor for what's happening to our lives in this nation, and why Canadians across this country are asking, where has our country gone? Right? Our country used to be based on truth, justice, reasonableness, proportionality. These are all values that have been ingrained.
You're talking heresy now, brother. I'll tell you.
That's it. So this is what's on the altar of our nation right now. All of these things, and unless we actually contend for it and speak up and say it's going to look differently. And your question is so good, because I have a lot of people in Canada that have given up on voting. They'll tell you openly, we're not going to vote our way out of this. But I got to believe, and we need to have the legitimacy of the peaceful process in the event and before there ever is a line drawn.
Yeah.
Because this is more evidence of tyranny. And, this is where Mark Carney has to think carefully about what the Canadian people are thinking, and all the bureaucrats that are supporting this bullshit, because this is an undermining of actual governmental legitimacy. Right?
Yeah,
This is the problem that the Canadian people are feeling, and this is one of the things that is the discussion that's going on at the kitchen tables around this country. Do we actually have a legitimate framework in this country? Because we've got a minority government that's driving these ground sweeping changes about what we are as a people. It's not in a referendum. It's never talked about in terms of the actual framework for the policies and election. And the country's just going further and further in the hole.
Okay, I got 2 questions. They keep coming. Accountability for politicians. Should they be accountable for, if they say that they're going to do a certain thing and they don't do a certain thing without justification, should they be held liable?
Well, I mean, this is a question for all Canadians, and it's for Albertans. I've been in 2 ridings now in Alberta, and people will whine about what's happening in our government, and yet they are electing the politicians that are enabling the things to happen that they hate. So we can say, should they be politicians being accountable? Yeah, they should be, but the people in the riding that are electing them won't make them accountable. So, for example, you look at Bill C-4 that was passed. That was December 1st, 2021. That's a bill that will criminalize you or me or anybody, any adult or grandparent, if they try and stop their child going trans. Okay. So if the child wants to take hormone blockers or undertake genital mutilation to change their bodies forever as a minor, and you try and stop them as a father or a grandfather, you're going to prison for 5 years.
Holy.
Okay. So here's the thing. So who passed that bill? That was a unanimous consent motion that was brought to the floor in the House of Commons by the Conservative Party of Canada, and every single member of the Conservative Party of Canada that was in the House that day, by their silence, allowed that bill to pass. They voted for it. So, okay, so we go to a general election, you talk to people, and they're offended that that bill was passed. They can't believe that there's this destruction of the family values or the primacy of parental authority. They're disgusted at this. But who do they elect? Right?
Yeah.
So you want to make your leadership accountable? Yeah, they should be accountable, but make them accountable. And so we have this right now where we have Stockholm syndrome in Canada with the Conservative Party, because we're in love with our abusers, and we can't actually leave the party to vote for a different change framework. So a framework of change. So if we actually had voices that were saying stuff like this to the media or in the House of Commons, we're going to start to see changes happen.
Okay, see, the problem though is that people look at the conservative, they go, well, I don't really like what the liberals are doing, and I don't really like what the conservatives are doing, but if I vote for somebody outside of them, I'm diluting my vote for the one that I think is the least worst. It's a really weird, like they go, okay, well, I will vote for the one that I don't want, so the one I really don't want gets in.
The lesser of two evils is always evil.
All right.
I mean, isn't that what we're seeing? Because we're seeing a liberal government advance an agenda, and the problem with the federal conservatives is that for them to get power, they actually have to try and beat the liberals going left in Ontario. So what they're doing is they're taking their policy further and further left. They'll never beat the liberals going left, and then what they're actually doing is they're asking Western Canada, and particularly Alberta, to pay for all the dysfunctional policy that they're implementing to get elected.
Wow.
So how broken is that? And that's why Alberta is moving towards independence, and why this is a hot topic. And it's not just about the money; it's about culture, values, and traditions, our way of life as a people. And that's why we have so many Ontarians and Maritimers in Western Canada and Alberta in particular right now, because they want the culture, values, and traditions
Yeah, you can feel it when you come.
of this nation.
Yeah.
But we've got to look at those deeper and those root issues to recognize what we need to do to fix it. So, yeah, you're right. They don't want to dilute the vote, but we actually need to vote. The Conservative Party has long left conservative values. What do they conserve?
Yeah.
I mean,
Their own jobs.
it's not
Their own jobs.
It's not Burkean conservative philosophy at all.
Yeah.
They're conserving nothing.
Yeah.
Okay,
wait. I'm gonna just wrap this up because I there's so many things.
Because we're tanning here.
I want to just ask maybe one final question
About the ostriches?
about the ostriches. So there's a lot of people here who are very concerned about an outcome that may not be positive. They're not sure how they will react. We're not sure how they'll react. I know there's many people that are emotionally invested in this. What would be your advice to people as to how they should react if this does not go in the farm's favor?
I think I've already said that. I think that this is another example in our nation of government refusing to listen. It's another example in our nation of a draconian overreach in terms of creating a solution that they want for some other reason. When there's all kinds of things that could be happening here that could remedy and avoid this. This is pecuniary. It's a punishment. Why aren't we testing? Why aren't we quarantining to find solutions? People need to learn from this. I'm not personally convinced that there's enough energy in this scenario for people to actually come to the realization that these birds are a metaphor for Canadians.
Oh, we'll see.
We'll see.
We'll see. I don't
See.
know about that. I have high hopes for that particular thing.
Well, good.
It's amazing how miracles can happen when you just leave the opening to it. You don't necessarily know what's going to happen. But as far as people, basically what I was driving at is, it's probably not the appropriate.
I want to see the birds live, right? I want to see the birds live,
Most people do.
and I do, right? And so,
Most sane people do.
but I mean, look, the change may not come that we need as a nation unless they actually go through and cull them.
Okay, so they
Right.
go through and call them. You know what they've done is they've made sure that we can't see any of it. They put up hay bales everywhere. They put up black fences everywhere. They've made no-fly zones all across the thing, and it extends out a kilometer. We can't see it from anywhere. If they shut off that road, we're not going to be able to see anything.
I wonder if Elon could see it.
Satellites could see it.
I wonder if Elon could see it. I wonder
That's
if he's
actually a-
under Canadian jurisdiction.
That's an
Maybe
interesting
maybe you
question.
should post this for Elon. and
Anybody
see.
who has access to the satellite images of what might be going on over the farm, we welcome it. Please reach out to somebody or anybody. 6 degrees of separation, man, we'll find that. We need somebody who has eyes on this that can't be corrupted.
Correct.
That'd be perfect.
That's right. Post
Okay.
that on X.
Well, thank you.
Hey, man.
Thank you.
Good to talk to you.
Appreciate that very much.
Grant from the United
Party of Canada. Yeah.
Yes.
All right.
Thanks. Thank you so much.
Nice to chat with you.
Thanks, man.
Hey, good to see you guys. Yeah, take
Yeah,
care.
man. Okay.
We're on the road here, so
See ya.
yeah.
All right, good. That was all right.
Awesome.
We're going to take a break here.
Awesome, guys. Thank you.
We'll see what the Supreme Court
Yeah,
says
call
tomorrow.
us if you need us back. Thank you.
Right on. Blessings. Okay. Bye-bye.
Take care, buddy.
Well, round two. And this is on a quiet day. Tomorrow's supposed to be crazy.
Tomorrow should be interesting. I hope the decision comes back in our favor, but I'm not holding my head up for that one. But do some praying, guys. Anybody out there, pray to God. Let's ask him for a blanket of protection over these birds and all these people at the farm.
And it would be nice if we could get a little warmth in the justice's heart for what's right and wrong.
They're also looking for another Zoom boom out there, 80-footer. If anybody's listening and has access to equipment or financing to get them the equipment, let's get them another Zoom boom. As they build higher, we go bigger. Let's get her done, guys.
All right, we're out of here for now.
Yeah.
From Kirk,
And Red Dog,
till next time.
love you guys.